As shocking as a kidnapping could ever be, someone kidnapped a 1.5-year-old infant. This is what happened. The kidnapper or kidnappers entered the residence near Hopewell, New Jersey using a ladder at around 9 p.m. on March 1, 1932, kidnapped a 20-month-old child, and then left a note demanding $50,000 as ransom. A little over an hour later, the Lindbergh baby, dubbed the Eaglet by the media, was reported missing by the child's babysitter, Betty Gow. The local authorities were informed by the Lindberghs, and they handed over control of the inquiry to the New Jersey State Police. Who kidnaps a baby? This has to be some level of insanity or desperation that we've never seen. Let's continue. The ransom note was found on the windowsill of an open window, and muddy but faint footprints were found in the nursery during a search of the crime scene. At the edge of the property, tracks leading into the woods were uncovered, along with a broken ladder that was discovered some distance from the Lindbergh residence. Although H. Norman Schwarzkopf of the New Jersey State Police was formerly the case's primary investigator, Lindbergh ultimately had the final say on many of the specifics. In short succession, 2 further ransom notes were obtained, the first of which increased the kidnapper's initial demand to $70,000. On March 8, 1932, a retired New York City teacher named John F. Condon published an advertising in a Bronx newspaper, promising to serve as a mediator between the Lindberghs and the kidnappers after numerous attempts to contact them had failed. The kidnappers agreed to use Condon as a go-between in a message they left for him the next day. A game of cat and mouse developed over the ensuing weeks, with Condon playing the role of Jaffe, to communicate through newspaper columns and the kidnappers hiding written notes at various sites throughout New York City. The kidnappers wanted the money 2 weeks after Condon got the child's sleepwear as identification on March 16. On the evening of April 2, Condon met a man he named John in Street Raymond Cemetery in the Bronx while Lindbergh waited in a car nearby. He bargained with John, persuading him to accept the $50,000 initial ransom in return for information on the whereabouts of the Lindbergh infant. The Treasury Department had documented the serial numbers of the money, mostly gold certificates, that John took. And he handed Condon a note stating that the youngster could be found on a boat called the Nellie close to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. The Nellie was never found, and Lindbergh himself led the ultimately fruitless hunt for it. The investigation team was obliged to admit that they had received nothing in exchange for the ransom. The rest of the story gets a lot worse, so please be prepared. Now, in spite of that setback, the search for young Charles went on, and banks were given the serial numbers of the invoices sent to John, in addition to publications in significant newspapers. On May 12, the situation tragically changed when the child's severely decomposed body was discovered not far from the Lindbergh residence, about 5 miles. The Lindbergh infant was murdered by a strike to the head during or shortly after the kidnapping, according to an autopsy. Up until the body's discovery, the U.S. Bureau of Investigation, now the Federal Bureau of Investigation, had just been providing advice. But on May 13, President Herbert Hoover gave the Bureau the go-ahead to handle the case as the principal federal agency. And the U.S. Department of Justice devoted all of its resources to the homicide investigation. On June 22, 1932, Charles' second birthday, the U.S. Congress passed the Federal Kidnapping Act, often referred to as the Lindbergh Law, in response to widespread indignation. Through the Lindbergh Law, interstate kidnapping became a federal offense that was punishable by the death penalty. The Lindbergh home staff and Condon were first the focus of the agency and the New Jersey State Police, but no solid leads materialized. As a result of Condon's assistance in helping the Bureau create a profile of John, gold certificates from the ransom payment started to turn up in the New York region. On April 5, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed an executive order mandating that all gold certificates in circulation be converted to Federal Reserve notes by May 1 of that same year. While this was done to stop people from hoarding gold during the Great Depression, it also helped investigators by making it much simpler to track the ransom money. However, it took more than a year for the investigation to make a significant breakthrough. when a gas station employee in New York City noted the license plate number of a guy who had made a $10 gold certificate payment. Authorities from the federal and municipal levels were able to locate the license plate at the Bronx home of a German carpenter who matched the physical description of John that Condon had given. Bruno Hauptmann was detained on September 19, 1934, and a $20 gold certificate from the ransom was discovered on him. The evidence against Hauptmann grew rapidly. He was eventually recognized by Condon as John. When more than $13,000 in gold ransom certificates were found the day following his arrest in Hauptmann's garage. According to a handwriting examination, Hauptmann's penmanship was stylistically similar to the ransom notes that the kidnapper or kidnappers had delivered. And his previous criminal history, which included a burglary, raised further suspicions. Hauptmann defended himself by saying that he was keeping the money on behalf of an acquaintance named Isidor Fisch, who had returned to Germany in 1933 and had since passed away. Hauptmann was charged with killing Charles A. Lindbergh Jr. on October 8, 1934. The Hunterdon County Courthouse in Flemington, New Jersey, was the center of interest as the new year began. The state of New Jersey v. Bruno Richard Hauptmann trial commenced the following day after the jury was chosen on January 2, 1935. The majority of the evidence used to convict Hauptmann was circumstantial. The ladder used in the kidnapping contained a section of flooring that was removed from Hauptmann's attic, and tool markings on the ladder appeared to match tools Hauptmann owned. Additionally, Hauptmann's residence revealed Condon's phone number scrawled on a closet door frame. In his testimony, Lindbergh himself admitted that he had recognized Hauptmann's voice the night of the ransom payment. Hauptmann declared his complete innocence when the defense invited him to testify. He also claimed that the police had beaten him and that he had been compelled to give handwriting samples that matched the ransom notes. The jury reached a guilty verdict on February 13, 1935, following more than 5 weeks of testimony and 11 hours of deliberation. And Hauptmann was given the death penalty. A clemency request was denied on March 30, 1936, following a succession of fruitless appeals that eventually made it to the Supreme Court in December 1935. Hauptmann was put to death by electric chair on April 3, 1936, despite his continued denial of any involvement in the murder. What do you think of this story? Justice may undoubtedly been served, but what possesses a man to kidnap an infant? Or even worse, hurt one? Only most bizarre and interesting stories on our channel. Until next time, make sure to like this video and subscribe.